you to go to business school to get your MBA. There's something that you want to change. Now, what about if that was positive change? And that culture is embedded in the institution that we're sharing this next session with. And I'm always fascinated when professors then take on senior leadership roles in the program, because they get everything. They get that buzz of the classroom, and they see these wonderful groups of students graduating every year. So it's a delight to welcome back to Centre Court Jochem Kroezen. Jochem is the academic director at the Rotterdam School of Management at Erasmus University. He's also an associate professor of organizational theory, had taught at one of Europe's other top business schools in the UK, got his doctorate from RSM. So Jochem, welcome again to Centre Court. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, Matt. It's great to be back.
I talk about this leadership role as the academic director. What do you most enjoy about that position, and perhaps the teaching too?
Yeah, there's lots. So I'm going to try and start off with a succinct answer. The main thing is that an MBA is a very magical experience, I think. Right, it's a transformational time, and to be able to be part of that and have a direct impact on such an important moment in someone's life, I find very fulfilling. And it's something that I've only started since September, right? So I came back to RSM in September, and it's really great to now give back some of the experience I've built up elsewhere and deliver on some of the things that RSM is known for.
If we look at your academic area, organizational theory, the idea of bringing together, hundreds of talented individuals from all around the world for this intensive 1-year experience, what does your academic background of organizational theory tell you about a project like that?
Oh, nice. Well, one is that the value of the human connection that you can create through a program. Right. So at the end of the day, an MBA it's not a transaction. It's really creating a community, right? A lifelong community. And there is a lot of things that I actually study in my research that I can bring directly into the classroom, which I've actually done also in the last few last few months, which is another aspect that I really enjoy about my role, right? Really bringing your research in a place where it's directly of value to people in the real world.
Right. I mentioned earlier a force for positive change. It's one of my favorite mission statements of any of the world's top business schools. How does it describe RSM? How do you like to describe RSM?
So there are a lot of things that go in there. A force for positive change is a mission statement that also is repeated throughout the entire university. Right, so the business school is embedded in a broader campus where we have many social sciences, and the last 10 years or so has been really transformational. So there's initiatives throughout the entire campus. There's so many that still today I'm discovering new ones that we can align with and connect to. So it's incredibly stimulating, right? So anybody who is on campus is constantly encouraged, stimulated, and challenged, right, to just do a little bit more to make the world a slightly better place. And there are a lot of things that we already had in our MBA program that I am building on and continue to elevate to actually deliver on that mission, right? Which is, that is my main task actually as an academic director, right? It's something that attracts students, and we want to make sure we live up to that.
Mm. You talked about the relationship with the wider Erasmus, and then in this thriving, design-driven city of Rotterdam. When you think about top European business schools, there are many. RSM is clearly one of them. What do you see as some of the key strengths of the MBA program?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've really, I really cherish about what I've seen at RSM so far is the collaborative spirit that we are able to create in the cohort. And in addition, our cohorts are extremely international. And those two features I see as something that students also are attracted on, right? So they come to RSM because they look for that in the MBA, right? They want something where they can learn from others, and they believe that the best learning comes from a more inclusive and collaborative environment. And that's something that I think we're really strong in. The other thing I think that we're really strong in is that we are slightly ahead of the game when it comes to thinking about what an MBA should be like in a world in transition, right? So topics around sustainability and the mission that you just mentioned have been integrated in the MBA curriculum and continue to be enriched now for many years, right? And you see that in the program. And finally, I would add that we're in a location that allows us to do great things with these topics, right? With the international diversity, we're in one of the most internationally connected and integrated countries in the world. And with the notion of transition, transformation, sustainability, the Netherlands is a very diverse country also in terms of the sectors that you can engage with. All the challenges, right? From climate change, rising sea levels, the transition that we have in agriculture, all those are basically in our backyard, right? And you can see the solutions as well, right? So there's a massive learning opportunity from taking your MBA in the Netherlands.
Right. And this idea of transition and transformation, when you then look at it over that 12-month experience, how do you then place emphasis on the personal development of the individual? That might be, passionate about sustainability, where better to go, but think themes of leadership that are also embedded in the program.
Yeah, so we're a general purpose MBA, right? And our mission is that this is something that anybody will need to contribute to, whether in a radical way or a more incremental way. And throughout the program, we have an integrative sort of floating course on personal leadership development. And from day one, you'll be challenged to put that mirror in front of yourself, right? Learn more about yourself, critically evaluate your own behavior in a group, in an internationally diverse group. And then you're encouraged and stimulated to perform small experiments, right? To see how you can improve or bring out your strengths even further in such a setting. So it's, I would say, one of the other core strengths of the program. It's something that we've invested in quite significantly. It's also one of those great achievements of collaboration between, our world-class research and those people that can actually bring it to value in a post-experience classroom.
Right. You talk about small experiments in leadership. Is that one of the secrets? Because taking small steps, when you then look at the individual that you welcomed in January at the start of the program, and then where they are a year later, perhaps not even aware of all of these small steps that create such a collective transformation. Is that what the dynamic that's at work?
Yeah, the bigger story is, and I sell that actually from day one, is I'm the academic director, but I know that at least 50% of the value of the MBA is not in the academics in a narrow sense, right? It's in these small experiments or sort of little surprises or discoveries that happen sort of around or even outside of the classroom. And that can only be done if you have that, diverse and collaborative community. So it's something we instill. And then there's a lot of opportunity for you, right, to shape that journey, right? So the small scale experiments is one example, right? Students set their own goals, right? So what are the kind of things they want to experiment with? And then they reflect after the fact in their study groups.
Right. My beloved Manchester United has turned to the Netherlands for leadership. We now have a Dutch manager, and my fingers are crossed. They're very promising signs. When you look through the lens of leadership, from the RSM perspective, what do you see as the sort of the key leadership skills that you need to be successful in business? And is it a different perspective from a school like RSM?
Yeah. Right. So being successful in business today, or, you can even say tomorrow, right, is thinking about that world in transition, right? We are facing a world that is changing even more rapidly than we know. It's increasingly complex. And we are faced with all these, grand challenges or wicked problems, right? That increasingly we know that organizations are at the heart of addressing them, right? So any organization you will find yourself in is grappling with this stuff. This means that on top of the traditional skills, right? So being an outstanding professional with deep knowledge and outstanding analytical skills, you need something more, right? That alone is not enough. We cannot be just creating leaders that are good at minding the shop. They need to be able to change fundamentally, right? So it starts with critical thinking, right? Understanding how the world functions as a social system, right? So that's something that also I've tried to bring even further into the curriculum from my own background in organization theory. And then on top of that, I would highlight a couple of sort of personal skills that we would invest in, right? And that's one is having that ability to provide a team that you lead with a sense of agency, right? Or purpose, right? In such a world, because we all feel that, right? We're increasingly in a world where we feel, just a small cog in a chain. And how can we possibly make a contribution to these big challenges we're facing, right? And, that's a difficult skill, right? Creating that sense of purpose and hope in the face of complexity. In order to do that, and our curriculum reflects this, right? It's all about human connection, right? So finding that human touch in a world that's increasingly, digitized and automated. Which is again something that requires that personal development, right? Increasing confidence, finding the human, right, behind all the profiles that you are confronted with. And then finally, it's about creating some form of magic, right? When people come together, it's animating something that goes beyond the numbers and the analysis, right? It's providing people with the opportunity to experiment and fail, right? And these are all deeply personal skills, and those are very difficult to acquire in, the online MBAs, for instance, right? It really requires you to come to a place where you can connect to other people and learn about yourself in that way.
And you describe them as skills, not just for today, but skills for tomorrow. And as we think about that human element and very complex environments, as we think about what is becoming a post-GPT world of AI, do you think that those skills are going to become even more valuable?
This is a risky question because now you're hitting on my research, and when you're hitting on academic research, I can talk on it for a long time. But it's true, right? I think paradoxically, in some ways, a world that is increasingly digitized or robotized actually means that we're going to be more concerned with the value of human touch, right? So that becomes only more important, because if you cannot bring that, then, the risk is that a robot can ultimately do a better job, right? So really figuring out what your special touch is very important. And we talk a lot also in our current classes about this concept of making or maker, right? So rather than seeing yourself as a manager, I'm using the metaphor of a maker, right? You're trying to create something new, make something new, which comes with very different skills and attitudes beyond the conventional model that we have of the manager.
Yeah. As students and with your colleagues, Brandon and others, they put together their applications. Perhaps they imagine a specific role, one of those multinationals on your doorstep in Rotterdam, or a top consulting firm. So that there's, they have this idea of the career path, and they're about to begin this journey with you, a journey of self-discovery. What advice do you have for those students as they begin at the MBA and the start of that journey?
Yeah, first of all, it's great, right? We need people with goals and ambitions, but at the same time, don't become too attached to them, right? It's good to start with a goal and an idea where you want to go, but make sure you remain open and curious, right? To learn things about yourself that you didn't even know, right? You had to learn something about. That's really, for me, the value of an MBA, and especially the MBA experience that we're trying to create, right? An MBA is not a transaction. It's really about that transformation, right? And there is some degree of magic to that, right? It's something that you cannot plan. It's something that you cannot define in advance. You have to experience it. And in order to fully experience it, you need to come in with a relatively open mindset.
Right. The Netherlands is well ahead in terms of the global Gender Equity Index and others as we look at diversity in our societies. Why does diversity matter to RSM, and are there any specific steps that you're taking to continue to build that pipeline?
Yeah. To start that with the first part, it's incredibly important if we're thinking about the challenges that we want our students to learn about and be confident about when they enter their new role, right? The value is really in having a classroom that can represent world society to some degree, right? So that diversity is such an asset because that means we have the vast majority, probably not all, but really close to all the perspectives in the classroom. And then the job of the course leader is just to try and bring that out, right? And then that's half the job done, because the learning experience is just as much dependent on your peers as it is on the lecturers. So that diversity is absolutely crucial, because if we miss a perspective, we miss a learning opportunity, right? The second one is it's a continuous process, right? So we have one of the most internationally diverse programs, but we always see opportunities to improve on that front and actually look for particular profiles that are underrepresented. Currently, just to share, right, this year, it may just be a fluke or random, but we have only one student with a Dutch nationality. And while we're very international, I do find it important that we at least have a few people from the Netherlands that can ground the cohort, sure, right? So thinking about what are the little tweaks we can do to make sure we appeal to as a diverse group as possible, which from a marketing perspective is not the easiest job, right?
Yeah. No, it's ironic that it also comes so close to home. And a step beyond diversity, we also then talk about the importance of inclusion. Do you see a distinction between those two?
Oh, for sure, right? So inclusion is to make sure we have in our culture equal opportunity for everybody to, feel part of the journey in the same way, but also contribute, right, to that experience, right? And we know from research that traditionally there are certain groups that tend to dominate in that experience, in the classroom experience, for instance, right? So what can we do to actually include all voices and all perspectives? It's something that we can do from day one in terms of setting expectations. But generally, right, the only thing you can really do throughout the program is lead by example, and then encourage students to reflect on dynamics in the personal leadership development journey that we have. And this is what we do, right? So on the first module, we have our organizational behavior course, right? And our lecture there is the example for how you lead an inclusive classroom, right? So and then we get that back in our feedback as well. And we hope, right, that then also rubs off on students.
Just as I think about this discussion of the last 20 minutes, you may not be aware, but you give off a lovely, just a very deep energy of loving your work, loving RSM. Of course, you have your PhD from the school. You both teach and have this leadership role. And you talk about how graduate business education may continue to evolve, and that face-to-face element of the full-time MBA program that is so essential. So how do you see graduate management education evolving in the coming years?
Yeah, no, it's true, and I'm in a very fortunate place, right? And that it's easy for me to display that kind of energy and love for what I'm doing, because I came in, post-pandemic, right? Opportunity to really build back better, right? And I can see the impact on the day-to-day, and just elevating the teams again that were separated before, that are now, bringing it all together again. And to some degree, it's again about that magic, right? When we connect everybody on such a transformational product, right? It rubs off everywhere. So I see graduate business education evolving in that direction if I'm thinking about my own program, right? So if you're thinking about the full-time MBA, right? What I'm worried about is that, well, what I will continue to work on is to make sure that we prioritize that part of the program, right? It's that experiential experience. It's the learning that you can only do when you come physically to Rotterdam, right? And increasingly, you can acquire financial skills, you can acquire knowledge about strategy frameworks online, right? You do not have to come to RSM for that, right? What you cannot recreate online is that experience that is location specific, right? So it's also the content that we have here in the Netherlands that we can work with, right? The companies that we partner with, the projects that we work on. So last week we completed, for example, the impact experience, which is an immersive experience where students are challenged to come up with an impact project in the context of sustainable cities. So they propose something for the city of Rotterdam. And I'm currently working on a follow-up to that project where later on in the year, they can actually try to extend that into a real venture, right? Those are the kind of elements I'm going to continue to bring in the program, because that's going to set us apart from knowledge that you can gather anywhere in the world that's increasingly digital.
Right. We've talked about transition, we've talked about transformation, but there's one word that has really jumped out. Your use of the word magic. I think we all need magic in our lives, right? In our families and our friendships, magic in the MBA classroom. I need some magic on the football field, as much as I can get. So applying that to any individual thinking about taking this big step, applying to business school, going to get their MBA and looking for that touch of magic, what is your advice for them in taking that next step and what they might be looking for?
Yeah, the word magic is funny, by the way, to use that in the context of a university that's all about science, right? But I don't think they're antagonistic that we may sometimes talk about them. Again, it's to reiterate some of the things I've said before, right? Your MBA is not about a transaction. It's really about a transformation, right? It's a simple message, but I think it's very important to keep that in mind. That is what you're looking for. And ultimately, that's also what you're paying for, right? So keep that in mind. So then that requires you to be open, right? Come in to be ready to discover things about yourself that you didn't know, to learn from your peers in ways that also you cannot plan, right? And then the only other advice I would have, look for an MBA, right, that can deliver a kind of transformation or a transformation journey that fits you, right? That should be the main selection criterion.
Yeah. We encourage our viewers at Centre Court, of course, to reach out, your colleagues, so many willing students and alumni and the campus visit. If you don't mind, just on the basis of today's discussion, I would like to taste a little of that magic in your MBA classroom. So the next time I'm in Rotterdam, if it coincides with your classroom schedule, I'd love to sit in at the back and get a taste of it.
That'd be great. You're very welcome, Matt, anytime.
Great. Jochem, thanks for joining us. Of course, viewers, we have a specific admissions panel with Jochem's colleagues to talk about the application process to RSM. So do pick that up during the next couple of days of Centre Court. It's always a pleasure, Jochem, to have you with us.
Thank you, Matt. Same here.